Okay, guys, I'm here today with Alex Kyriakides. He's with Atlas Lawyers, the amazing lawyer. We're friends. We're both Canadian, and he lives on the Gold Coast. Thank you for coming on today and chatting with me. Nice
Oh,
to see you.
you're making me blush. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, fellow Canadians have to stick together. So Alex, I'm really excited to have you on today because this is a really interesting topic, and I think a topic of that not a lot of buyers and or sellers too are aware of. So what we're going to talk about today, and to go back, Alex is a solicitor, has his practice here, but also has a conveyancing practice. That is what you do for the most part. So your specialty working on the Gold Coast is that you're involved in e-conveyancing, and you work with PEXA, and is it Simply? There's a couple of platforms that you work with.
Simply is a newer platform, but we'll get into that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So what I found really interesting was that not a lot of people really are aware of what happens from offer to unconditional offer to actual settlement day and beyond. And that's why you're here, because we want to talk to you and share some and shed some light on the e-conveyancing process, what the benefits are, why we should be aware of that, and the whole process, and kind of help us understand what happens when we sign the dotted line and we go to hopefully owning the home. So I'm going to hand it over to you.
All right. Well, I'm excited to explain it, and I'll maybe if I can share my screen here. I have a few photos that we can maybe work on our slideshow. Can you see? Does that work?
Yep, that's great.
All right. So thanks for that introduction. Yes, Atlas Lawyers from Alex Kyriakides from Atlas Lawyers. I have my own law firm, and there's a high emphasis on conveyancing and property law. And when I first moved here, I realized there's got to be something different or something newer that I can kind of adapt to. And what I saw was e-conveyancing coming out. So I just stuck right on it. My mission of Atlas Lawyers, just so I can let you know, and I'm very passionate about educating. So the clients that I have, I want to make sure that they're educated, because when you're educated in whatever legal process that you're dealing with, and conveyancing is a legal process, even though it can seem very procedural. Once you're educated, then you're empowered. Then you make the right decisions, and any issues that come about, and there will be issues that come about, you will not be stressed out as much because you're educated and well versed in what's going to happen, so you can make the proper decision. And obviously, the final thing that I do is I guide you, but based on my experience, what I would do, but I'm with you, which gives you strength. Hence, Atlas Lawyers is why I've created Atlas Lawyers, that I help you carry the heavens on your shoulders. All right, I'm going to get less poetic, but anyone that knows me, and Tiffany quickly realized how Greek I am, but I try to push that for anything. I love classical history and mythology, and hence my logo, but also in my presentation, I'll have a little bit of a theme. I don't know if many people out there would know about the Odyssey, but what conveyancing can be seen as is an Odyssey. So there's a Greek statue there, and the definition of an Odyssey is basically a long wandering or voyage, usually marked by many changes of fortune. So a lot of perils, a lot of obstacles in place. What does that have to do with conveyancing? Well, conveyancing is an Odyssey. It can be. People realize that when they purchase, they think the hardest part is actually making the decision, negotiating the contract, and signing on the dotted line. Mm-hmm. But you know what? From the time they sign that, especially in Queensland, because it's very different, from the time they sign that contract to the time they get the settlement keys, a lot can happen. And so it's my mission to educate the people to really see how the process works and what can go wrong, so they can prepare for it and maybe mitigate and avoid it. So what I emphasize is e-conveyancing, but to understand the benefits of e-conveyancing, you have to understand the proper conveyancing procedure. And to put this into perspective, in Queensland, from from before COVID, now it's changed a little bit, but 80% of conveyancing, 80% of conveyancing transactions actually took place the old-fashioned paper way, where physical bank checks were presented. There's a settlement agent that would come, and those exchanges had to take place. And if everyone wasn't on board and everything like that, then settlement would get delayed. Even though we have electronic conveyancing in places like New South Wales, 100%. It's actually mandatory now. So Queensland's a little bit slow to take this on. So that's where I said, well, geez, people need to know the benefits and how this is really doing them a disservice, because it's the industry that's kind of slow to adapt to it.
And I think some conveyancing businesses do have e-conveyancing. That's part of their service, but you know, we're still seeing a pretty imbalance. Like they're still doing it the traditional way for the most part. Some people are catching on, right? And just like we're going to explain today, like we have to understand, I think it's so important to understand what happens when you sign for that contract. And just because you're, you know, people are obviously hiring you and whoever they hired to have this procedure go through to settlement. So you should understand exactly what you're paying these people for, and you, like people like yourself, to do this process, make sure that it's going to actually be smooth and not have delays, and understand exactly what headaches might come about, and making sure that you have someone to hold your hand through that and educate you through it. So
absolutely.
Over to you.
Thank you. No, absolutely. And there is a difference between, so us as solicitors and law firms are registered with PEXA, which is currently the only e-conveyancing platform that can do transactions. But some people say they're registered, but still they're not used to their systems taking place, so they'll still do the traditional paper settlement way. And the problem is, if I represent a buyer or seller, I push hard, let's do e-conveyancing, and my clients, they see my passion for it, and they say that it's of benefit to them, that they'll say, yeah, Alex, we'll do it. And then I'll say, well, hold on. I got to go to the other side and make sure that they do it. Otherwise, it doesn't matter. It's going to happen the paper way.
Yeah, that's a good point, because if both parties aren't actually going that route, it doesn't happen. Yeah.
Huge point. And that's a big hurdle that we face. So so the way I wanted to approach it is, the people in the industry, real estate agents, do have a strong voice because they have direct access to the buyers and the sellers. And if I can educate real estate agents that real estate agents like you that really would want to know about the whole process and everything new that happens, that they can pass that on to their clients, and actually everyone benefits because it becomes a very smooth transaction. Yeah. But a lot of real estate agents in Queensland surprisingly don't even know about it. And also other law firms. I don't mind. I don't see them as competition. I want them to engage in that so I can have someone to play with.
But also too, is like if agents don't understand it, they're not going to educate their buyers and their sellers. So they're not going to understand it and know that there's another option out there for them. That they could have avoided this delay, which you're going to go into. I won't take your slides away, but they could have avoided the delay. They could have avoided the costs associated if they knew. And if the agent was educated, they can pass that on to the buyer and seller.
And at least say one thing, and then say, we'll talk to a solicitor that really would be educated. Exactly. Not just me, anybody else that would. I'm not the only advocate out there, but maybe my Canadian accent makes me stand out a little bit more. So anyway.
That's the best part of it, right?
That's right. Okay, so I kind of summarized the conveyancing process from a conveyancer solicitor's perspective in Queensland, where usually the contract is signed and negotiated, and then that contract comes to the buyer or the seller solicitor. So I'm going to talk about the point where it's signed. If the buyer or the seller signed the contract, we have a binding contract. There's still, in Queensland, there's that conditional phase. In Queensland, the conditions generally would be building and pests, finance condition, due diligence, whatever the agreement is, but those are the two kind of general ones. Then once that happens, there's a lot that can happen in that time. That's where you probably want to get a more communicable solicitor or conveyancer that can kind of not break the deal during potential negotiations through that process. Because that could be stressful as well, but I digress on that. So once everything's done, there's satisfaction of building test, finance gets approved, then it goes to an unconditional phase. So the contract is now unconditional, then all systems go. Buyer's solicitor is going to be requesting all searches that are required. Seller's ready to go. Everyone's providing, coordinating the transfer documents that are required, preparing the financial documents, and preparing for exchange and settlement day. So things
and,
like,
mortgage financing starts, the ball starts rolling with that too.
Absolutely. So everything gets kind of time sensitive, and in Queensland, time is of the essence as well. So it's funny. So you may have a 28-day contract, but realistically, all the stuff is going to be compacted in 14 days usually. Again, this is generally, but once it goes, it doesn't make sense to spend more money or do more work until it's really, it's going ahead with unconditional phase. So once it is unconditional, then searches are requested, waiting on receipt of those. Transfer documents are provided. Now, this is the traditional paper way. A buyer solicitor would provide the transfer document to the seller solicitor. Then the seller solicitor would print that out, get the sellers in, have them sign it, or get them to have their signature, execute them with the JP there. And then they would have to clip it to a cardboard, because it's very important. This is the physical document that's going to be registered with the land titles registry. It can't be bent, can't be folded. So they mail that executed document or partially executed document via Australia Post to the buyer solicitor, and then the buyer solicitor gets it within a few days, and then they execute that, and then that has to be produced at settlement, the exact location for exchange, along with all the checks. And then settlement day is when everything happens, but it's in a paper settlement day. If you can see now, there's a lot of time that passes between getting documents, mailing them, receiving them, sending them to someone else and actually attends settlement. If these things aren't done beforehand, or even something happens at that point, settlement can very likely be delayed, and possibly even be delayed for a few days. So I'll get into that a little bit later. I talked to you about the transfer documents. So there's a sample transfer document, partially you can see on the left side. And I mentioned to you, it can't be folded or bent. Sometimes I get it in the mail and I see it bent, and I get the iron out, because you're scared. You're scared if it's not received, the land titles registry might not be able to accept it. And for something silly like that, this is a transaction. This is actually, I took a photo of my phone in Australian Post last year, where I had mailed, I don't know if anyone's familiar with the Gold Coast area, so I had mailed my transfer documents from Broadbeach to, it was meant to go to Southport, which is just another suburb, so it would have been a 5-minute drive, but I said, you know what, I'll mail it, send it out to the settlement agent there. And I don't know if you can see it, it went from Broadbeach to Brisbane to Greenfields, Western Australia. Now, I'm not originally Australian, so I'm confused as to where Greenfield, Western Australia is. You can see where it says customer inquiry. Now, from April 11th to the 15th, I realized what's going on. And then they said, oh, we sent it to the wrong place. We'll send that back. And then it went back to Brisbane on the 16th, and then actually, so it was lost in the mail. Not lost, but just it went.
Yeah, that can happen,
Odyssey.
Right? Yeah.
It's Australian Post is just like Canadian Post. So
yeah, no, and that's so unfortunate that you can have delays like that, and just human error it happens. So.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, like, you're going to explain how we can avoid this.
Absolutely. Right. So here's another example. So I was like, geez, where is Greenfields, Western Australia? Yeah, that's where it is.
Across country. Yeah.
Yeah. 8,923 kilometers.
Yeah. That's a very unfortunate circumstance.
All right. So that's just one example. Now, again, the biggest thing is settlement day. This is game day. This is a lot of activity goes on. And keep in mind, us as solicitors, other conveyancers, we have a whole bunch of things on the go at the same time. But if something is amiss, if there's some issue, we have to drop everything and make sure that this settlement takes place. Well, that's my mentality. Now, some may not have that mentality.
Well, and also too, buyers and sellers are planning their lives around this day. Everything's planned. Like all these things are ready to go, and if something is amiss, it's just everything just kind of topples over. So
now, how would my buyer be receptive of the news of saying, "Oh, sorry, settlement's delayed because it was lost in Australia Post. It ended up going all around Australia."
Yep.
They don't care, nor should they. Why am I not settling? Because what's going on?
Yeah, no, that's unfortunate.
So anyway, settlement date, that's one aspect. Receipt of the physical transfer documents. Two is receipt of check directions. Now, this is a very common thing where if I'm representing the buyer side, the seller's solicitor, if there's a mortgage or anything like that, once we agree on the figures that need to be presented at settlement, they need to provide what's called check directions. They need to tell me as the buyer representative how many checks they want and to whom they want it. Now, a lot of times, if we have a mortgage coming in as a buyer, they want those instructions by 10 a.m. or 11 a.m. settlement day. And settlement takes place at 2 p.m. Now, there are many, many, many times where us as buyer solicitors get the check directions probably 9:30, 10 o'clock, 10:30, and we have the lender's representative breathing down our neck saying, if we don't get this, we're delaying settlement because we can't cut the checks in time to provide them at settlement.
And this is the physical checks, right? Like directions to actually deliver this is the traditional way. So
absolutely.
Stressful.
So unnecessarily, you think, right?
Exactly.
Why? So now this is human. This can be up to human error. So now I have 30 minutes to kind of, all right, now I've got check directions. I have to make sure I give exactly the amount to the penny of the checks that need to be produced. And if those checks are not produced, even though I had 30 minutes to kind of muster it out, maybe 10 minutes or 5 minutes, then settlement won't take place because all the agents will be around. Well, this check is off. This is not the right one. We can't settle. Get another check. Oh, we can't get another check until tomorrow, right? And actually physically getting these bank checks. So sometimes as a buyer solicitor, you might have money held in trust. And now, especially during COVID-19, try going to the bank, waiting in line, tell them to withdraw money from a solicitor's trust because there's a special way to do it as well. And some bank attendants know, some don't. And you need to get that check ASAP for 2 p.m. settlement. It's really difficult. And another thing now with COVID-19 is I have settlement agents that used to come and pick up the documents, pick up the checks. They don't anymore. So my option is either me going to Australia Post, and I don't trust the Australia Post anymore.
Well, especially right now too, it's delayed. So
even more reason they're overwhelmed as well. So I'll just drive it up there. It's not worth the risk in my mind anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
So all right.
So all hail the e-conveyancing to save us from this stressful time.
So e-conveyancing, you'll hear the word PEXA as well. PEXA is actually the only venue for e-conveyancing at the moment, the only platform. PEXA stands for Property Exchange Australia. So if someone's going to say, well, we're doing PEXA, then at the moment it's interchangeable because they're the only ones that are able to conduct transactions via e-conveyancing. So what PEXA is, they're actually integrated with the Reserve Bank of Australia, and I'll tell you the benefit of that in the future. But also, they're also integrated with the Land Titles Registry, which is quite important. So here's me being a little bit of a nerd. This was actually my very first PEXA transaction about 1.5 years ago, 2 years ago. I was taking pictures because I've lived through that stress of not trying to avoid not delaying any settlements. Luckily, I was able to pull that off for many of my clients. But geez, when I saw this, when I see, oh, everything's ready, and this is done the day before or the morning of,
Just
I
the
don't have to
stress
worry
goes
about
away.
anything.
Yeah.
It says one side's ready, the other side's ready, and
Yeah.
I don't even have to
see those yellow boxes. Those are good yellow boxes.
so soothing, right? Because
Yeah.
in a paper transaction, you may think everything's ready, but then you might get a call from your settlement agent at 2 p.m. saying, something's missing,
Yeah.
or the transfer documents aren't drafted properly, or something like that. You never know.
Yeah.
So if it's ready, that means everything's ready, and then it automatically just goes on its own. And then if people haven't signed off or parties haven't signed off, if it's scheduled for 12 o'clock, it automatically turns over to 12:30. No one has to say anything. It just automatically turns over, and then everyone gets an email saying, it's not signed off, so please look at it.
So you're getting notified, right? The whole process through.
Absolutely.
So you're not worried about people calling and being the messenger. Like, everyone's notified. Everyone knows what's happening and when. It's beautiful.
And that's the beauty of it, because generally there are going to be 4 parties to a transaction: the buyer, the seller, the incoming bank, and the outgoing bank. So you have to, in a paper settlement, you also have to contact the incoming bank 3 days before when they get ready to book, and provide them with other documents. And if you don't contact them well in advance, they might say, no, we didn't have advance warning, so we can't schedule for tomorrow. You have to reschedule. Again, when there's a platform like this, you just invite everyone in. They're all aware of everything that's going on and who needs to do what. So remember when I said it's integrated with the Reserve Bank of Australia. Now here's very important for real estate agents and sellers. When you sell property, the paper way, you get a paper bank check. Now that bank check, so a lot of times is received by a settlement agent. Settlement agent then mails it, sends it to the seller solicitor. And the seller solicitor calls the seller and says, your check is here, ready to be picked up. Then the seller would go to the office, pick up the check, and then when they have time, they go to the bank, deposit the bank, and bank checks take, 3 business days to clear. And when we're dealing with money, if there's no mortgage, you can be dealing with hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars of money that's yours, that's not cleared, not ready to be spent for another week or 2 after settlement. So that's a huge
That doesn't
benefit.
sound fun. That's not good.
No, absolutely not. I mean, if you're sitting on $1 million and you don't,
and let's say too, it's like a lot of people might have pending deals on the other end, right? Like, they're waiting for those funds to purchase something else. That's just incredible.
Yeah, and like I said, it's what PEXA says is within 10 minutes to 24 hours, you'll have cleared funds. So all money that gets exchanged, it'll be cleared and spent. It'll be in the whatever allocated bank account that you have. So that's huge, huge selling point.
Huge.
Here's something for more of the real estate agent industry, because but many people buying or selling wouldn't know. Technically, a real estate agent has to wait for an email or a confirmation from the solicitors involved that settlement did take place in a paper transaction. In PEXA, there's actually an automatic notification that you set up. So you don't have to be in front of a computer, and PEXA says settlement's taken place, email sent out. Now, here's the issue. Technically, the agent's not going to be giving you the keys until they get that confirmation that settlement is. They shouldn't. So how can someone understand why they can't get the keys when they know settlement's taking place? Oh, we're still waiting for an email or confirmation from the solicitor. And then we're busy too. But that email should be sent as soon as possible. So that's another one that people don't really know. Instantly lodged with the registrar. People buying. Now, people don't think about this, but you just bought the property, you just spent it, settlement took place. In a paper settlement, the transfer documents are still held either by the incoming bank or it'll go to the seller solicitor, and they still have to be physically lodged with the land titles registry. And at the moment, the land titles registry there's no counter service, so you actually have to mail it in. Your name is still not on title, even though you paid the money and settled, until that document is submitted with the land titles registry and approved. What I mentioned before, it's integrated with the land titles registry, so automatically settlements taking place, all the checks have been done, your name
Instantly
is
you're
on
title.
title.
Yeah.
Instantly on title.
Yeah.
It would help a lot of people that are purchasing vacant land that they want to build on. They can't build until they get the title, and if they have to wait, they could wait literally 2, 3, 4 weeks. They'll have to follow up with the mortgage with their incoming banks. Did you guys lodge it? There's some horror stories where you get lost. So yeah, so there's another huge benefit as a buyer. So you mentioned Simply. Simply is actually a new player to the e-conveyancing game, but they're not a mom and pop company. The people in the industry know InfoTrack. Many people may not, but they're partnered up with the ASX, which many people should know. So this goes to show you the magnitude of what e-conveyancing is. So people think, oh, e-conveyancing, they're dealing with a lot of money. Is there any risks with fraudulent activity and stuff? So who are these people that are really conducting these transactions? These are big companies, and they see the value and the benefit to everyone. So for the ASX and InfoTrack to partner up to create another platform, it tells you something. So they, at the moment, are still going through the regulatory hoops to get to get approved for transactions to also take place like PEXA. Here's my kind of disruptive call to arms. So my issue is people don't know about the benefits, and when people, the buyers and the sellers, really know what goes on behind the scenes that could affect them, they'll be asking for change. And if they do, then simply by asking the solicitor or the conveyancer that they hire before they hire, are you registered with PEXA or are you registered for e-conveyancing? If they're not, find someone else. There's many of them that are now registered, especially there's a big influx now that COVID-19, people start realizing it takes a pandemic for people to realize that, oh crap, having 4 or 5 settlement agents in a confined room may cause delays in a settlement. There must be another option, well, e-conveyancing. So guys, buyers and sellers, please create the change. It's going too slow on our end. Here's some arguments against e-conveyancing in PEXA that I've kind of heard. So it's not secure and open to fraud, and it's open to fraudulent activity. As I mentioned, these are big companies. They put a lot of money into their algorithms and things. This is also mandatory, legislatively mandatory in New South Wales, Victoria. The government's not going to make it mandatory if there was more risk to go the electronic route than the paper route. So it's just a cop-out. It's just someone not wanting to change with the times. It costs more. So there is a registration fee for both a buyer and a seller. You're paying, it's $114 for each. However, in Queensland, PEXA has reduced it to 50%, so $57. Now, people are thinking, well, it's still an extra fee. Well, now consider this. Who's paying for the bank checks? There can be quite a bit of bank checks, $10 to $15 each. Buyer and seller would be paying. Who's paying for settlement agents? They cost $50, $60 to attend. Buyer and seller can also be on the hook for that. Again, as a seller, what's it worth to have cleared funds almost instantly, as opposed to 2 weeks in advance?
Oh, it's a no-brainer.
Exactly, but
you know, for the delays involved, like having to worry about moving costs and maybe moving the date of your move, you know, other purchases that are pending, like it just doesn't make any sense. It's a no-brainer.
You see how passionate I'm getting.
I know. I am too. I think it's why
are we not doing it?
Exactly.
So that's why I want to yell at the top. Thank you for giving me this platform to just shout out.
No, I 100% agree with you.
Here's an argument. It threatens the conveyancing industry, and I heard this as well. That one, there's no line across it because, yeah, it does. I don't care, because some firms, and let me tell you the difference between a conveyancer and a solicitor in Queensland. A conveyancer is basically a legal assistant. They can't work alone. They have to work under the supervision of a solicitor. Now, a solicitor is a solicitor. They've gone through law school. They can provide legal advice. And when you're buying or selling property, you might want to have access to someone that can tell you, oh, you know what, you can do this, but this is the effect. Or they're pushing like this, but you shouldn't be concerned. Mm-hmm. If you have a solicitor on your side throughout that mitigates a lot of stress. It's one of your biggest transactions, if your biggest in your lifetime. So
yeah, it's huge. And we're looking at stats now within Brisbane, most suburbs, people don't really move for 10 to 13 years. So if you think about this is the most important move you're going to make in over a decade. Have the people on your side that are going to help you through it and get things done quickly and as legally as possible, right?
Absolutely. And the people in the industry that actually make the argument that it threatens the conveyancing industry, they see conveyancing as a procedure. This paper comes in, this paper goes out, this needs to be bailed, this needs to be arranged. You have to call the banks to make sure that everyone's there at settlement at the same time. That's not conveyancing in my head. Conveyancing is a legal service. That, if that could get minimized, then you have more time to speak to your client about the whole process. So they're educated, empowered, and they can tackle any possible issue and see that settlement will take place. And if it doesn't, plan ahead if there's any unforeseen issues. So yeah, those are the what I had there. Imagine a seamless conveyance. Okay, so this is my visualization here. Close your eyes. Now, all of a sudden, I've heard many people haven't represented after the fact. Oh, I wish I knew you did conveyancing, because it was one of the most stressful times in my life. And people don't realize, they think the hardest part is signing on the dotted line, but they don't realize the process from here, especially in Queensland, from contract date to settlement date. You want someone with you that's up to date and that knows the benefits and is looking forward to making things as easy as possible for you and all the parties involved. We don't want an Odyssey. We want just a straight line, contract to sale, settlement. That's all you want to know. And that's what you want as a real estate agent. You don't want to be saying, look, settlement's not going to take place today. I'm going to take the keys back until 3 days later. You're taking it's a 180. You're taking a very joyous event and actually pissing people off.
Yeah, it's really discouraging. It's disappointing. You know, you want to go through this. You've gone through the stress of selling your home and allowing people coming through your home, going through the negotiations, you know, the odd condition, maybe some things fall through, maybe there's another offer in play. That's stressful. And you get to finally an agreement. You want the process to be smooth so you can deal with this and move on, right? You can celebrate and go to your next property or go to the next phase of your life. And as agents, and just like with yourself, you know, most of the joy of our job is allowing, you know, us to be a part of that process with them and be able to help them, you know, sell their home or buy their first home. And this is a joyous occasion. We really don't want to have delays and have it be a really stressful process.
Well said. I'm speechless, and that's rare.
That's all I have to say.
So again, here's the call to action. You be the hero, buyers and sellers. You're educated, you're armed right now with the information. When you do go out there and make that big transaction, big purchase, big sale, just ask, are you aware of e-conveyancing?
Yeah.
If not, I'm going to find someone that is.
Yeah, and agents, be educated and find out who is representing both sides. Let's try to make this process go as smoothly as possible. Exactly. Bring in conveyancers that work with e-conveyancing. Make sure that they get a couple, you know, references and call a couple people. Make sure that they're on board. You can't afford not to.
Again, speechless.
Right? Oh, thank you, Alex. That's amazing. Are you able to not share your screen now? Do you mind?
Oh, I'll
So
pop it. Yeah.
amazing. Like, I feel when you walked me through this process initially, my mind was blown. I just thought, for all parties involved, this just is a no-brainer. You know, we really should be trying to make sure that we all incorporate this into every transaction from now on. Period. Full stop. There's just no excuse. You know, it would just make everyone's lives so much easier and so much more of a joyous occasion and experience, right? So thank you for walking us through that. Like, I
No
think it's
problem.
really important that all of us understand what exactly goes on from signing to settlement. And you just did that. So now we're all fully educated and ready
Yes.
to make the best decision possible. So if you'd
Awesome.
like some more information, everyone, you can go onto Alex's website, atlaslawyers.com.au, and, you know, give him a shout, ask him questions about this. And, you know, obviously, if you're working with a conveyancing business right now, ask them the question. You know, if you have a solicitor that you know that you've been working with, ask them the question. Make sure that you get all the information and all your options so that we can make this the most exciting and happy occasion, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thanks, Alex.
Thanks for
We'll
having
see
me.
you again. See you soon.
Thanks.
Bye.